So it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 3 and see how this specific phone holds up in 2023. Now, it's actually been about 10 years since this phone came out, and I still remember this phone coming out like it feels like it was just yesterday. This was an insane device that Samsung made, and I remember the release of this thing, and I actually had someone in my class that actually had one, and I just could not believe my eyes. When I was looking at that specific device, it was insane what this specific phone basically was bringing. So I will start off this video by saying that this phone is probably not worth buying in any capacity anymore. It would make zero sense to buy a phone like this. You're going to be stuck in the past, and there's no point in doing that. However, there are so many better phones in the marketplace now that even if you swing for something like an S21 Ultra, a Note, maybe not the Note 20 Ultra anymore, but like, an S21 Ultra, S22 Ultra, a Galaxy S21 Plus, an S23 Plus, these types of devices that are already depreciating in price tag, you can pick up some of these phones for like a couple $100s and get a phone that's going to last you for many years, that's going to give you amazing performance. However, I would still say that a phone like the Note 3 was probably a little bit more impactful in some ways than the devices we have now. But if you want to pick up some of those other devices, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Galaxy Note 3, on the front, we did have a massive 5.7-inch Super AMOLED panel. Now, how crazy is that? A 5.7-inch panel was massive back in the day. But you have to remember our iPhones had like 3.5-inch panels. I think our Galaxies, S series had like 4.3-inch panels. So the Nexus 7, I think, had 4.3 or something like that, 4.7, something like that. So that is insane that we had a 5.7-inch panel. And the reason these phones felt so big was, for one, it was uncharted territory. We weren't going up that size yet. So all the phones were basically like 4 inches or less. But also, this thing had quite a bit of bezel. So, the top and bottom bezel, it wasn't as bad as the Note 2, but it was still quite a bit of bezel during that moment. So when you look at something like the Note 3, it still honestly looks pretty nice. Like, it really doesn't look that old. And I feel like the jump from the Note 2 to the Note 3 was a pretty big jump, but I feel like the Note 4 also was a really, really good looking phone too, during that moment. Now, you had the home button on the front, you had the capacitive keys next to it, front facing camera, the whole 9 yards there. And I definitely do think it looked really nice when it came down to it. So from that perspective right there, it kind of gets a thumbs up from me. I really like the Galaxy Note, and I do think Samsung did a really good job with the front, at least on the front of this device. Now on the bottom, you did have like this fast charger, which was interesting, but it was like a micro USB port. You had a headphone jack as well, which was really cool. Now on the back of this phone, this is where things were very, very interesting. This is why I loved Note phones so much. The Note 3 had a removable back. So you could just go ahead and basically pop off the back of this phone, and you could just go ahead and, you could just replace the back if you want to. But that wasn't all. You could also go ahead and basically remove the battery. So you could go ahead and just remove the battery if you wanted to. So if that was something you wanted to do, then, well, basically you had that capability there. But that wasn't all either. You could also go ahead and, expand the storage right there as well. That was another awesome thing that you had the capability of doing, that a lot of other phones during that moment still kind of didn't have. So the fact that this one had that type of capability right there was so amazing, and I love that type of capability so much. Having that expandable storage, having that removable battery, all that stuff is so awesome, and I'm really glad we basically still had that type of capability, at least for the next generation of phones too. And even up until like the S21, we had expandable storage, so that was kind of a nice thing as well. So in terms of the outside, I would still say this is a fairly impactful phone, and Samsung did a really good job with this phone during that moment. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in the camera department, this thing does have a 13 megapixel camera on the back. It's a standard camera. Nowadays, clearly it's probably not the best camera in the world, but at that moment, I remember seeing a lot of people talking about how good of a camera this thing was during that moment. You also had a 2 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. So that kind of stuff is so amazing. Having that type of camera capability right there is so cool. And like I mentioned, I'm such a humongous, active advocate, whatever you want to call it. When you're getting a, type of camera like that, you can basically go ahead and be future-proofed for a few years. Now, I would say in this day and age, clearly that camera is not worth it anymore. It's a very outdated camera. It doesn't really look that good anymore. But I will still say for that moment, it was a really nice touch, and I'm really happy we had that type of quality from a camera. Some would say during that time that the iPhone still had better cameras. Don't know if that's 100% the case, but I would say a phone like the Galaxy Note 3 it was a decent camera for many years after that, but clearly nowadays that's not quite the case. It's kind of missing like multiple cameras, no 4K at 60 anywhere, and like maybe even no 8K, but still, I like this camera for what it brought during that time. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of software, this is probably going to be one of the areas, the reason why you should not be buying a phone like this. Even if the hardware was still good, the software on this phone, not only did it stop at like TouchWiz something, but also it's like a phone like this is going to be very, very outdated in terms of software. So it hasn't even gotten a software update in like 15,000 years. So because of that, it doesn't really make too much sense of buying this phone because it's already going to be giving you an outdated experience. So because of that, you would be in a much better situation if you were to go and buy a phone that's still somewhat supported. That's why phones like the Galaxy Note, 20 Ultra even are still kind of supported. Not really, but they're still kind of in discussion, maybe security updates here and there. A Google Pixel 7, like those types of phones, Pixel 5 even. These types of phones are going to still be supported for many years. So with the Galaxy Note 3, unless you're going to custom ROM this thing, it doesn't make any sense buying a phone like this at all. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of the performance side, this phone internally had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 chipset inside of it with 3 GB of RAM on all the models available on this phone. Now you might hear those numbers and you might be like, oh, like this phone is super slow, like it couldn't be able to handle anything you threw at it. Quite the contrary, this phone back in 2013 was probably the fastest phone of that year or one of the fastest phones of that year. So the fact that this type of phone during that moment was that fast, and it didn't even have it had probably the highest specs on a phone during that moment. It's still insane that we were in that situation. So that's an awesome thing that we had. And just that in and of itself, having a phone that fast and that powerful in your hands is so beautiful. And I love that kind of stuff more than anything. So I will tell you, with a phone like the Galaxy Note 3, although performance-wise, during that moment it was really, really good, it makes zero sense of buying a phone like this at all anymore at this moment. And the reason for that is because this specific device, what are you going to do with it? It's not a powerful phone anymore, and that's kind of the problem that you're getting. The applications, you can't really install any apps on it. Software updates are kind of out there too. So you're stuck in this weird kind of situation where this phone isn't really worth it, but maybe it could have been in some ways. So it's just a kind of a weird situation. That's why I look at a phone like the Note 3. I'm just like, it's not really worth buying. In terms of battery, because it did have a removable battery, you could easily go ahead and basically, swap out this battery for another one. But I think even that, it is what it is. It's not a big deal. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll tell you is, I don't think the Galaxy Note 3 is worth buying at all. It makes pretty much zero sense of buying a phone like this. It makes a lot more sense buying a phone that is still supported with software. Even the Note 20, even though it's kind of not supported anymore, it still is kind of supported. So you could go and buy a phone like that. Any of the Google Pixels after 2021 are pretty much fair game. The Galaxy S21, the Galaxy S22, the Galaxy S21 FE, these types of phones that have already been out for a few years now that you can just go ahead and buy, those ones make a lot more sense than the ones that, are kind of, like this phone that's kind of stuck in the past. So the Note 3 I love a lot. It brought a lot to the table, but it makes very little sense of buying a phone like this in this day and age. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.